My name is Reuben Jacobs. I am a designer. I do predominantly residential design, although my background has been in commercial architecture. My inspiration for becoming an architect was my dad. My dad was an architect in New York, where I grew up, and he went through his early career as a draftsman in big architectural firms, but his military background got him full disability when I was a very small kid, and that empowered him to go back to school and get his degree in architecture and actually a master's degree in urban planning. And why that's a big inspiration is, as a kid, basically my home transformed into this home studio. So all the drawings he was doing going through school were up on the wall and building models and all of that. So as an 8-9-year-old, I knew this is really cool and this is exactly what I want to do. Well, my journey to become an architect started at that young age of knowing I wanted to do that. And I looked at schools from a young age and actually found out that University of Southern California had a good architecture program. And we all know they had a good football program, and I really wanted to play football and architecture. So from an early age, being a New York born and raised kid, I knew I wanted to come all the way out to Southern California, sight unseen. And my parents actually lived in Southern California before I was born, moving my brother and sister that are older out here when they were young, and they lived out here for about 3-4 years. For them, kind of interesting, because the Brooklyn Dodgers followed them, and we were Brooklynites. So they came out in the late 50s, but moved back. So knowing I wanted to do this, and my mom really liked Southern California, we moved back in the middle. Well, she moved back and I moved out here for the first time in the middle of high school, and I finished high school here at Inglewood High and actually went on to go to USC and studied architecture. Didn't play football. People were a little too big. But I did study architecture, and all of my professional practice has been here on the West Coast. The architectural style that I like to design in is really mid-century modern. So it's funny, in the architectural world, mid-century modern is really kind of the mid-1900s. So it's kind of the beginning of modernist architecture. And for those not in it, they would know how to gravitate to that. People like Frank Lloyd Wright, he's probably your best known person. Some of that stuff that was done in the Chicago, Milwaukee area that he did. For people that don't know architectural styles per se, it would probably be places like Upper Ladera, Lower Ladera as well, really predominantly Lower Ladera. That would be that mid-century modern sort of architecture. And that's what I gravitate to the most. I started out, after getting out of school, I worked for large corporate firms doing large-scale work. I worked on a couple of big hospitals like the UCLA Medical Center and actually the new LA County USC Hospital. And I also worked on malls and different sort of institutional projects. After about 15 years of working for firms, I was really gravitating towards trying to do some of my own work and my own design work, because I hadn't had an opportunity to do that. And I really fell into and moved into residential design as the boom happened. So as a designer, because I should really clarify, a licensed architect goes through registration just like lawyers do, and I'm not licensed. So as a designer and unlicensed practitioner, I'm able to do residential design, but not commercial. So for a lot of commercial work, which I do still do some, I partner with registered architects, and several of which I've had long-term relationships with from back when I was working in commercial. The process for designing a project for clients really starts with getting to know the client twofold, getting to know the client and getting to know the project site. Almost always the project is an addition, and it's certainly an addition to the community. So you want to know what's around you, because really that's what I take my clues for as far as what the design aesthetic is going to be. But I really get into what's the end game for the client. And a lot of people think the end game is just merely, I have a house, I want to add another bedroom and bathroom. But it's really getting into, what do you want to do with this thing? Is this something you're going to flip and sell? Do you plan on having another child or a child? Is there a mother-in-law that's moving back in? So it's getting to know what we call in the field programming. You're getting to really know what one is trying to do. And then when you look at those two sets of issues, it starts to help you design and to develop a project that's going to work for their needs based on what they want and what clues you get from the site and the constraints of the existing building that you have. So I go from there. The first thing I really start having to do before starting at the point of drawing is I have to measure all what's there. So I actually go through and field measure everything. And then I draw up what's there. Floor plans, side views, which are referred to as elevations, exterior elevations of the building of what's there. And from that point, I start to develop sketches and ideas on what can be. And I give a client options that we refer to as schematic designs. And they are multiple different options on how I could achieve the program that they wanted. And as they start to choose from that, I can narrow it down to a finalized design idea. And once that's finalized, then we do what so many people refer to as the plans, or what are the whole drawing package, what is the drawing package to be submitted to the building department to get permits. As far as what I want people to see in my plans is really to get the vision of where we're going to go with the project. Because really the plans are a means to an end. We really want to build this thing. And some clients are not savvy at reading plans, so you try and identify that and get them to understand proportions and what they're looking at, because really a drawing is a miniature version of the built environment, but it's a snippet. Either it's a plan is a top view, and elevations are side views, but they're not three-dimensional views. So I also develop some three-dimensional views, but you really don't experience it till you see the whole thing. And it's trained people like myself that can perceive it from those plans. And the idea is to transfer that knowledge and information while we're developing it, so that when it gets built, clients kind of understand, hey, okay, I expected it to look like that. So one thing that I like to do is give clients images of projects that are completed. Very often not my own, but some imagery that they start to understand what it will look like. Finishes that are on it, volumes of space, and those sort of things, so they get a pure sense of what these plans will translate to once we build it. The one thing I would like my prospective clients to understand is, with the development of a project, every designer is different, and their processes can be different. So it is, although it's a science as well, it is an art. So I think people in the arts can kind of relate to this, and people have seen some other arts more often, a la musicians. You will not have, there's different musicians develop a song the same way. and architecture is going to be the same thing. So the one thing is to understand, go with the flow and try and be as expressive in what your vision is as a client as you can, and then we will develop from there based on that and try and convey that to you.